Hello, everybody. Anna Sabramowicz here. Hope you're having a wonderful Thursday, March 21st. How are you, my friends? Let me take a sip of my magic coffee. All right. So today, what I wanted to talk to you about today is stories. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about them is because I had a conversation yesterday with somebody, and they shared their stories with me, and I thought, now I feel closer to this person. They were a subject matter expert, but I thought, obviously, I was doing research for a scenario. Hi, Joe. Thanks for joining me. And one of the things that came up in a conversation with a client earlier this morning is they said, "Yeah, we're doing scenario-based learning," and I said, "Oh, yeah, that's awesome. So, are you using storytelling?" And the person said, "Yeah, we are." And I said, "Oh, okay, how are you doing that?" And they said, "Well, we're not actually doing like stories. We're just, a scenario is a story." And I was like, see, there's a difference actually between a scenario and a story. Now, first, let me tell you why stories are important. So before we were talking to each other via chat and email, we actually shared information in orally, right? We told each other stories, and the people that could share good stories and remember great stories got to live on because that's how we passed on information. So in other words, what's happened is that the reason you and I are here and we're able to still communicate and we've come up with all this magical technology and all this stuff is because we've been able to share information and retain it and repeat it and move it on for thousands and thousands of years. This development is fairly recent. Our brains are hardwired for stories. That's how we remember things. That's how we experience things, right? And what's really cool is if you've ever read about something like the Gestalt effect, if you have two events happening and we tell you that they're part of the same kind of narrative, your mind will naturally just fill in the gap and say, hey, that's a part of a single story. So that's pretty cool. But that's not what I really wanted to talk about today. What I wanted to talk about today is how there's a difference between a scenario and a story, and why you would actually want to make the extra effort and include story in the learning that you're designing, especially if you're designing scenarios. So why do people enjoy stories? Why do people go to movies? Well, you could probably think of a couple of reasons, like, when you go to see a romantic comedy, it's not just because you like to laugh. It's because through that romance, you get to experience the feelings of love again, right? You get to be along with the character and with them experience their journey, and that journey becomes your own journey. And a lot of times, like, I'm a huge drama fan, right? So, and also if you go with me to the movies and there's going to be like an intense catharsis, like I will cry, not like at the drop of a hat, but definitely, like, there's been some movies where I've just been like completely emotionally just into that movie, and if anybody was around me, they'd think I was like just like really crazy because I was really into it. Exactly, Joe. You can relate to the characters, right? And their journey becomes your journey. So that's why we sometimes are drawn to the same movies over and over, is because we enjoy those experiences. So we enjoy being a hero. We enjoy overcoming challenges. Well, guess what? Your learning also should satisfy this. And one of the things that's kind of funny is that this is so intrinsic in what we do. This is so intrinsic in what we enjoy doing. But for some reason, when we get into things like when we get to corporate learning, it's like it's been stripped out of there. And then people just resort to like fun templates that are story-like they'll bring in like pirates or something, but they don't actually incorporate story elements. So let me just tell you a little bit about that. And Joe, you're not embarrassed to say that as a man you would cry to. Totally, right? And I really love it when somebody really gets into a movie, because that to me means that they're just like, they're going to walk out with almost like a free therapy session, because you walk out of those movies and you feel so much better because you got to work through that, right? That was awesome. So now let me show you. So a typical scenario, let's say module, let's say, you could have a bunch of scenario questions. These represent, each of these, I call them a pearl. So this is, let's say, a string of 3 pearls where a learner goes along, is presented with a situation, which is not necessarily a story. It's story-like, it's not necessarily a story. They make a decision, they see the consequence, and they move on to the next question. So this in itself is okay. And if you're just doing this, you're like 95% more sophisticated than most places. Most places ask you a question, they give you like the multiple choice question, and then they just give you the answer, like whether you were right or wrong. They don't actually go to the level of developing consequences, then giving you feedback, right? A lot of this is just like, this is awesome already. However, have you ever watched a movie? Okay, let's say you go to a great movie. It started. Have you ever just like in the middle of it gone like, you know what, I'm just gonna come back tomorrow? Probably not, right? You're like, I want to finish it. I want to see what happens. I want to see the outcome. I want to see if he gets the princess, if he makes it to the to the tower. All those things, right? What happens is we want to experience a sense of completion, a sense of like, we want to know what happens. If sometimes you watch a movie and you're not able to finish it, I don't know if this happens to you, but I will think about it. It'll come back to me. I'll be wondering what happened. There's this unfinished business for me, right? Well, guess what? This is the kind of unfinished business that you can incorporate into your scenario that will help people finish it on the first try. Because a lot of times, whenever we launch things, especially like these tiny little modules, people are so distracted, right? But your learning is only maybe 10, 15 minutes, right? So you want somebody to go through it in a single shot. You don't want them to try and come back later because they probably won't, right? You want them to start it, finish it, get it done, and then move on to something else, like another piece of learning, or join a Facebook group that talks about, the context you challenge them on here. So this is what stories do for you. I'm doing this on the fly writing for you. So what happens is you have your string of pearls with a bunch of scenarios. What you can do with a story, and this is magic because it actually works, and we're stealing this from Hollywood, everybody. We're stealing this from Pixar. So before your scenario begins, you have a sexy slide here that basically this is just the opening. Hi, Kara. I like it how everybody's like, hi, saying hi to each other. This is great. So your string of pearls works on its own. However, here all of a sudden you have this setup. Now the setup is basically you creating a character for your learner to experience the story through, right? And one of the things you want to do is set this person up pretty deeply. So then what happens is, if you set this character up, and I'm not talking about like a theme, I'm not talking about the mermaid theme or the, like I mentioned before, pirate theme, none of that. You're just introducing a person. And that person has to overcome a challenge, or they have some emotional things that they have to work through, or they think everything's cool and awesome, and they think they're rock stars, and then something happens and it shows them that they're not. Oh, wow. Okay. What's happening next? So what happens is, throughout, let's say, I'm just doing hypothetical here, throughout their week, they're now experiencing these situations that you had baked in, but as a learner, I'm growing with this person. I'm experiencing these challenges because you set them up well enough. I want to know what happens at the end. Now, what this is, this path, it's called something magical. Wait for it. Are you excited? Hi, Biodun. Thanks so much for joining. It's called transformation. A lot of us, when we design learning, when we're first getting started, we set up the character pretty good. We have a lot of compelling questions, but we don't make the difference between where I started as a character to where I finished compelling enough that I actually care. And that's usually when you see stories that are not, when you see stories that are like, if you ever leave a movie and you were like, yeah, there's a reason why you weren't excited. And I bet you, and you probably do this next time you watch a movie and it's not actually, it doesn't connect with you. It's because you didn't connect with the main character. You didn't, it's even at the end, the transformation, the difference between who they were at the beginning and who they were at the end, or how their life had changed, was not substantial enough for you to care. So if you don't care, you will not care about that story or the outcome. So what you have to do, this is your challenge. I challenge you. The very beginning, when you're setting this up, you have to make your learner care about that character, and the difference between where their awesome life's going to be over here versus where they were has to be dramatic enough that they also get to feel the satisfaction of achieving that. And that's one of the things we kind of drop off. We're like, yay, you got it. You achieved your objectives. Who cares, right? Who cares, really? I mean, only we care because we designed this thing. But we have to sell them on that story and the journey, so that what's awesome is all this person, let's say all of our scenarios are only about them discovering that they have gaps. But this person discovers that they have all these gaps, and at the end, they're like a more amazing person, or their family life's better, or their coworkers respect them, or whatever, look up to them. This person hasn't really done any learning yet. All they've done is developed, the awareness that they have some gaps and they should go after this and get some learning. But what you're doing is you're already giving them the feeling of achievement. You're giving them the feeling of what it's like to be there, and then they want it more. So that's what stories can do when you incorporate them into your training. The transformation piece, just, you're like, that could be me. That's what you want them to think about. In the very beginning, you're relating to them with small details, but well-chosen details that explain the life before they went on their scenario journey and they became this person here. So, yeah. Hi, Andrew. So that, my friends, is transformation. So you want to establish, and it doesn't always have to be like superhero. You don't have to make it blowing it over the top. In fact, if you look at some of the best examples, and maybe you guys haven't seen this. I don't know if you've seen this movie. It's the one with Sandra Bullock in space. I think it's called Sandra Bullock in Space. So one of the things you realize when you watch something like that is that most of us are never going to be astronauts. However, what's magical in that movie with Sandra Bullock in space is that the first 10 minutes are spent on you learning how a person you are never going to be like. And that's one of the things that's a challenge always to movie makers, right? They're doing stuff in sci-fi, space, gravity, thank you. But then, very strategically, you learn how you can connect with a person who is like a super smart person who's gone through all this training and they're in space. You can't relate, but all of a sudden I find out, like country music. Ooh, this person likes music. Bad choice, but whatever. Also, has a daughter left behind and is worried about her, right? Misses her. Ooh, there's another emotion, empathy I can care about. So you're creating a connection with a person in an environment you're never going to meet. However, there are some elements there that you can use to connect with them, right? They like music, they have family, they care about people, they're anxious and nervous, they're worried. You can easily empathize with that person. So your character actually, the development is not really about where they are in the world. It's really about, can you find these little details that make them human? And then at the end, do I care about them enough that I want to help them solve these in the right way? So a good example of this, you've probably seen this. If you haven't, go and check it out. It's brokencoworker.com. That's where the demo is. And we started out with a guy who was really kind of a pushover, had a terrible situation at work. And basically that day that you got to meet him is the day that he said, if you don't help him make good decisions, he's going to quit. And then he's going to have to go home, face his fiance, whom he moved to the city for this job, and tell her that he couldn't cut it at work. And she's going to be like, why? And he's like, well, because I couldn't deal with this lady at work. And guess what? He's going to take that problem with him the next place he goes to, right? So can you help him? So we set it up so it's really sad. And you want to amplify this, right? This is this is the movies. This is not the real world. And then you go through the scenarios to see how he can deal with that bully, Emma, and then what the transformation is at the end. And I've gotten so many emails from people who said, you know what, I didn't I didn't even think I needed to go through this, but it was so interesting, and I wanted to see all the different ways that I could interact with this person and how they would react, and if there would be different outcomes. They went through the story several times. That's what you want, right? And that was such a cool experience. So if you haven't seen that yet, go check it out. Now, scenarios. Those are the things I love. But storytelling in scenarios, that's like an amazing carrot cake, okay? With icing, cream cheese. It's very, so good. If you're working on a scenario design project that's coming up and you want to basically learn more about where your specific gaps are, I do a strategy session with you. It's focused around scenarios. So if you want, I'll put a link underneath the video. Book a call with me. We can talk about your project, where your gaps are. Maybe I can help you. So if you have any other questions about this magic that I just shared and how you could be using it and where you're struggling with it, just let me know. I am here usually a couple of days a week, and I share tips, and usually I draw for you as well. This is and then I try to figure out how to show it to you. So if you have any other questions, let me know. But it was so wonderful to see you all here, and thank you so much for visiting, and maybe I'll see you tomorrow. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for stopping by. And there's like a 20-minute delay. So if I don't say bye to you right now, it's because it doesn't actually show until way later that you've posted something. So thanks so much. Take care. Bye.